Here we go. Running a restaurant, no easy feat. Everybody knows this. Variety of constant moving pieces, challenges. I want to dig into costs first because it's forefront in everybody's mind, right? Of course. Uh, these days, all days, doesn't change. Margins just keep getting thinner and thinner. The margin for error keeps shrinking and shrinking. So operators need to be dialed in. What's step number one?
Yeah, so cost controls and boosting profit is so important. And when I owned restaurants, I was absolutely obsessed with this. And I had double the net profit of the average full serve restaurant in this country, basically because of systems. And we're going to talk about some of those today. But really, your biggest costs in any restaurant, of course, are your food and beverage and labor costs. So we're going to talk all about that. But you need to take inventory. So the very first step, and it's so funny, Jamie and audience, as I travel across the country and meet so many operators and I ask questions a lot, I find out that they think inventory is placing next week's order. And it is not inventory, right? Everyone needs to order, of course, but inventory is really about at any given point in time calculating the true value of your food and beverages on hand in your restaurant. Okay. So there's a step to this. And it includes creating a template. I have a template available at restaurantrockstars.com. But essentially, what you want to do is you want to count your inventory when it's at its absolute lowest levels possible. And for most of us, that's usually after a busy weekend, because the less inventory you have to count, the easier and the quicker the process and the more efficient it is. But when I say a range for efficiency, your template should include all your different storage areas. So most of us have walk-in coolers, and that's probably the biggest storage area, followed by freezers. We have stand-up refrigerators, sandwich units, different lines that have different refrigerators, and we all have dry storage that stores things that are not perishable. So everything should be arranged in the way you would count it. So maybe you start with the walk-in and you list everything as you walk in the door of that walk-in. Are there shelves on the left side of the wall, on the back side, shelves in the middle? Depending on the size of your walk-in, do things methodically and list them as you would count, top to bottom, front to back, that sort of thing. And then go on to the next. Go to your freezers, go left to right. If you've got a stand-up freezer, you get the idea, and move on. And then the same with your storage. Accuracy is so important. So it's all about consistent data and processes. It's usually a good idea to have one person that actually looks at the inventory and counts it, and another person to mark it. Now, yes, there is software that does this. There's software that does everything today, but I've never been a fan of software because sometimes the onboarding is a little onerous. Whether you decide to use it or not, check it out. That's your decision. But I've always believed that it's so important to understand the fundamentals so that you can calculate things just with pen, paper, and a calculator. And that gives you a real intimate feel for your business. So what we're looking to do is get a grand total of how much food do we have on hand in all those storage areas at any given point in time. And my template, or yours, should automatically calculate what that, the value of that is on the bottom line if you enter all the data consistently and accurately. So what I didn't mention is Performance has an order guide. If you're a Performance customer, you know that it lists every single thing that you order from them, how it comes into your place. Does it come in by the case, the side of beef? You know what I'm saying. And there's a price attached to that. And the simple math is just reverse engineering, literally, how a case would break down. Is it a case price? Is it several units? That sort of thing. And if you accurately enter all the costing data, my spreadsheet is going to calculate the value. When you type in 6 units of this times the price, it'll give you a total. If it's 4 cases times the case price, it'll give you a total, and then it automatically calculates a value. That's step 1 in the inventory process.
Gotcha. Let's go. All right, appreciate that. Let's go further into the F&B component and calculating the food costs more precisely. And then we'll go to labor after that. The other big components of product costs. We're gonna, kind of take it piece by piece. What do you got for F&B?
So inventory is a 2-step process. The first thing requires you to take the physical counts and get that bottom line total of how much value you have in all your storage units. And if we're talking about food here, it might be $5,000, it might be $10,000. It varies by the size of your restaurant and your weekly purchases. But there is a formula on the second step. The formula is simply the beginning inventory, and I'm going to explain what each of these terms means in detail, but the formula is beginning inventory plus your purchases for the week minus your ending inventory equals usage divided by sales, and that gives you your cost of goods sold percentage for your food and your beverage. So that's a little onerous if you've never seen that formula before or actually worked with it. And again, I have a template for this particular spreadsheet. What is beginning inventory? So beginning inventory is the very first time that you do your physical count. You just went through your walk-ins and all your storage areas. You typed everything into the computer. It automatically calculated $5,000. You can see it on the left side under food beginning inventory. That's your first week that you do it. Now, I recommend you do this process 4 weeks in a row for a very important reason, because you might take your inventory the very first time and get $5,000, and then you're going to go through this whole calculation. 1 week later, okay, 1 week later, you need two numbers. You need beginning inventory and ending inventory because that represents an inventory period of 1 week. Okay, so you've got your beginning inventory of $5,000. Next, purchases from performance are going to come in the door maybe twice a week, maybe 3 times a week. You get the idea. Those are your purchases for the week. My spreadsheet will total purchases. And then ending inventory is when you take your physical counts 1 week later. Now, it's very important. I mentioned accuracy and consistency, and also taking these counts after the weekend when your inventory is at its lowest levels. It's usually a good idea as soon as you close for business on a Sunday. Hopefully it's an early enough hour. Maybe it's 8 or 9 o'clock. Maybe you're burnt out after the weekend. You don't feel like doing it, but getting it done is a really good idea, because if you get deliveries in on Monday morning and the truck shows up at 6 or 7 a.m. and now you're trying to count stuff and the deliveries are coming in, you get the idea. It's okay to take inventory Monday morning early as long as you know that there's no risk that performance is going to show up and deliver your goods while you're in the middle of your count. So now you've got 2 weeks of data. You've got your purchases. Now this spreadsheet automatically calculates usage. You don't have to calculate that. The template will do it for you. But what is usage? Usage is everything that you sold to a customer at full price, anything you sold to an employee at a discount, anything that got wasted or spoiled or thrown in the trash, anything that got comped or voided off a guest check because they didn't like it or it wasn't what they expected, anything that got stolen out the back door. That represents your true usage for that week or that inventory period. Now, the next important thing to calculate is sales. Now, if we're talking about food inventory and you go to your point of sale system, you're going to get a week's date range there for sales, but you do not want total sales. You only want your food sales, or else that's going to artificially skew this number and it's going to be inaccurate. So you don't want to count retail merchandise and you don't want to count beverages, because that's a whole separate calculation, which follows the same formula on the right side. So here we go. We got $5,000 the first time you counted your goods. Let's just say you took in $3,200 in purchases for the week. Your ending inventory is the second count 1 week later, Sunday night or early Monday morning, and now it's $4,550. It automatically calculates your usage because it's beginning inventory plus those purchases minus ending inventory equals $3,650. Now your food sales were $11,750. You divide by that and it gives you a 31%. Now you might be happy with 31%. That's a good food cost in today's standards. But you got to do this several weeks in a row, because let's just say you go through this process and you get this 31%. A week later, we count it again and we go through this formula for the second time. And now you got a 34%. And you're like, whoa, what happened? And then you do it a week later. And now it says you got a 29%. And then you do it a week after that, and then you're back to like 30 or 32%. And you're like, I don't know what my food cost is. It's all over the place. You need consistency. And that's why you're seeking to hit that 31. Next week, a 31 or 31 and a half is okay. 31. If you can get that 4 weeks in a row, you're psyched, because you don't have to do this process every week anymore. Then you can go to a 30-day count every 30 days, and that's important. But what if you don't do this every week and you just do it once a month? You could be losing money every single day and then find out 30 days later, oh my gosh, my food cost is 35% when I want it to be 31%. And that just cost you a whole lot of money. Same process follows through for beverages. Same formula, same inventory count procedure.
Yeah, Raj, it's a lot of homework. It's a lot of
Up
work.
front. Yeah. It's a little
Yeah,
bit of homework up front.
yeah, but if if you stay on it and you identify the components that you just ran through, it really makes a gigantic difference. And you have to. You don't want to find out a month later that you've lost a whole bunch of money for no reason other than you're not being on top of it. So let's go to the next big component, and that's the next big bucket, and that's labor costs. Right. This has been just increasingly complex to manage for restaurants, with the wages kind of spiraling, some would say out of control in a lot of marketplaces. And combine that with just finding good people. And we're definitely going to hit on people
Mhm.
later in the show today. But labor cost, what's this magical sweet spot you like to talk about?
I love that word sweet spot because just like the food cost, you might be happy with a 31%. If you can hit that consistency, with consistency, I would call that your sweet spot. Same with labor. Now, labor can swing wildly, and we all know that kitchen labor is more expensive than front of house labor. So we really need to zero in on that. But what I used to do every single week, and I have a template for this as well, was to look at my labor costs two different ways. And on the top, you'll see total payroll. And I think it says $9,850. Maybe that was my payroll cost last week. Okay. If I'm doing it every single week. And then we've got a total weekly sales number. Now, I said earlier when we were calculating food costs, we didn't want to include non-food sales. In this case, we do. Total payroll. Now, let me explain total payroll. If you pay yourself a salary as an owner or a GM, okay, plus all the wages that you have, anybody that literally is on that payroll report includes total payroll. But then you've got payroll expenses, the social securities and the state taxes and all this kind of stuff and the FICAs. And we've seen all of this. And then the last expense, of course, is what you pay your payroll company to process all this stuff, unless you use software for that, of course, but you're paying QuickBooks if you do that. But you get the idea. Your total payroll cost would be the report that you get with the checks if you're still doing it that way. And the bottom line number includes everything. And that's your total payroll dollars. And then go to your point of sale system and accurately enter that 7-day period of sales, okay, total sales, and plug that in. And the simple math is total payroll dollars divided by total weekly sales, and it gives you 30%. And that's a sweet spot. I would be happy with that. Now, I mentioned kitchen labor is more expensive. The second thing I would track every single week would be kitchen payroll as a percentage of food sales only. And that's a whole separate calculation. But again, you can look and isolate just your kitchen staff and all the expenses associated with that. And then just type in your point of sale system, food sales for that week. You get your 22,100 number. Do the math, and there you go. The template automatically calculates the math, divide this by sales. But now we got 31%. And I'd be happy with that. If my kitchen labor was 31% and my labor cost today overall was 30%, I'd be psyched. I mean, a lot of restaurants listening and even out there in restaurant land have much higher costs than these. And we're going to get into prime costs. And the lower these numbers are, the lower your prime cost is going to be. And we'll explain that coming up.
Yeah, everyone always popular question is what should my cost be, Roger? What's a good target to have? And the answer, of course, is it depends. Depends on your location, depends on your concept, depends on a lot of things. But going through some of these guideposts where it will really help some people say, wow, if Roger's saying 31's good and I'm at 37, or he's saying, my labor cost is be nice if it's 30, but mine's 20. Am I special? Am I doing something unique? Maybe you are. Maybe you're running a quick service and you have a very low food cost. So labor cost, it does vary considerably, but this is the one that matters the most. When you put both things together, what do you got?
It's so vital to calculate this and to know what it is week to week. Prime cost is the magic formula and number that you need to be aware of and understand. Now, it's literally the sum total of your food, beverage, and labor cost expressed as a percentage. Now, notice at the top, there's a math formula, a very simple formula. What we're doing is we're averaging our food and our beverage costs. So let's just say in the prior slide, we got a 31% food cost that we calculated and a 23% beverage cost. We add those together and you can see it's 54%. An average is dividing those two percentages by 2, and we're going to get a 27% average for food and beverage costs. Next, we're going to add that labor cost to it, to that 27% of 30. And the big number, the prime cost, is 57%. What does that mean? Imagine everything is expressed as a percentage of $1. So 57% of $1 means that for every $1 of sales in your restaurant, 57 cents gets taken away from every dollar of sales just to pay your food, beverage, and labor cost. Now, that's kind of scary because, as you know, there's a long laundry list of expenses in every restaurant. Okay, we have the lease or the mortgage on the property, and you've got property taxes if you own the property, and you've got insurances, and you've got utilities, and you've got repairs and maintenance, and you've got internet and telephone and dumpsters in the parking lot and linens and all this stuff. But think about that. What does that mean? That means you've got what? 43 cents left over from every dollar of sales to pay all those other expenses. So the lower this prime cost number that you can achieve, the more likely you are of having money left over to pay all your expenses and yourself. So the rule of thumb is your prime cost should be somewhere between 55 and 60% or 55 or 60 cents from every dollar if you have a prayer of making any money. And the lower you can make this number, the more money that you will have left over in terms of profit or cushion in your bank account. So this number is absolutely critical. And so many restaurants don't calculate this regularly. It's so vitally important to keep this number as low as possible.
Yeah, because you already went through some of the laundry list of other expenses that start to deduct. If you were to go to our site, and I'm remiss in not having this handy, but on our site a long time ago, one of our authors had this great simple article that talked about this concept in a way that you could meet with your staff, and it was as simple as this: you put $1 on the table. Okay. You sit down the staff and you have kind of open book management.
Yep,
you sit down with the staff and you put $1 on the table and do it with coins, right? And then you start to take away the money. Okay. In this case, we're taking away 57 cents. And now you take away the rent, and there's more change goes. And you take away all the other costs of Rogers does. And sitting there at the end, 6 cents, 8 cents, 9 cents, 10 cents. And the staff goes, holy crap, what are you talking about? You're not a millionaire. You're not a zillionaire as a restaurant operator. And the answer is no, you're not. But the public thinks you are, and your staff thinks you're raking in the money.
Yes.
And if you don't explain it to them in a very simple format with dollars and cents, they will continue to think that. And I know we're going to hit on this later in the show, but until they have a mindset of being an operator and really caring where every penny goes, your restaurant really can't be as effective as possible. So,
wow.
Take that little exercise and do it.
You're bringing up so many past memories from my restaurants before I put these systems in place, like 30 years ago. And you're right. It's like every time Roger sold, a 20 back then, 30 years ago, if I was selling steak for 20 or 22 bucks, right? Mm-hmm. Every time Roger sells a $20 steak, Roger puts 20 bucks in his pocket, and he's living in the fancy house and driving the nice cars and all this kind of stuff. And they had no idea, but it was all about being careful and processes and procedures and understanding that every one of these things costs money. And every time, I remember losing a ton of silverware. We opened this brand new steakhouse. We had really nice silverware. I think every fork, knife, and spoon in the place cost like $4 or $5 a piece. And we had hundreds of these things. And 3 months later, I look in the silverware drawer and in the dish pit, and half of it is gone. I'm like, what happened to my nice silverware? And I noticed it was ending up in the trash. Sloppy busters on the plate. Oh, a knife fell into the trash. No big deal. Over the course of months, we literally lost lots and lots of silverware. And that was an eye opener. And then we had these really fancy dinner plates. I think every dinner plate cost $7. And then all of a sudden the dishwasher, somebody slips and a plate smashes on the floor. And now that $7 plate cost just came off the profit of the next steak I would have sold for $20 for, just for what we charge the customer, not even thinking about the food cost and the labor and all those other expenses. So this is something you need to train your staff in, process, procedure, and understanding that everything has a cost, and you should treat everything as if you owned it and had to pay for it. And we're going to get into that next or coming up because it's part of this.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of opening the eyes of your staff to how this stuff works.
Simple education.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that I find amazing, and you could literally talk an hour about this topic, or you could talk half a day about this, but You go to a
Yeah.
restaurant, you open up
Wow.
the menu, the variety of things can be amazing. You're like, wow, how can they serve all these things? And there's a delicate balance between having too many and not enough, and finding that sequence where you're selling enough things and they're profitable. But do you know what's profitable? Do you know where the profit comes from? Are you selling stuff that's losing money? And this is a big pet peeve of yours, Raj. So what do you got?
Well, it's scary because I see so many restaurants on the, on the verge of losing their life savings or their
Mm,
property. And so many restaurants have failed during the pandemic and after simply because, the cash flow isn't there, the profitability isn't there, these systems or calculating these things isn't necessarily there. And just as important as prime cost is, costing out each and every item in every category on your menu is so important. And that's a process unto itself. And yes, it takes a little homework to do all this, but once the system's in place, you've got a system, and then you don't have to reinvent the wheel again week to week, month to month. So yes, there's another template for this. There's a couple actually, but costing out your menu involves figuring out what each ingredient goes into every appetizer and every entree and every other item in different categories. And then again, from invoices, your order guide from performance with a calculator, figuring out of that case that came in the door, what portion of that case literally goes into a pizza, a burger, a steak dinner, whatever it is. But you got to list every single ingredient. And a lot of restaurants, once they do this, they forget about the takeout containers. Now, before the pandemic, I used to just charge that off to supplies, takeout containers, pizza boxes, all that kind of stuff. But then the pandemic hits and everything goes to online ordering and curbside delivery and pickup and all that, and Uber and DoorDash and all this kind of stuff. And now just about every meal leaves the restaurant either in takeout form, or how many guests don't finish their meal at a sit down restaurant and they're like, oh, can you box this up? And hundreds of boxes a week go out the door, if not more. You should include that in your ingredient costs of every single item. So once you've costed out every item, it's going to tell you a couple of things. It's going to list all your ingredient costs with a grand total, which is called the plate cost. So let's just say a pizza, for instance, if you add up all the ingredients, the cheese, the dough, the sauce, the toppings, all that kind of stuff, let's just say it's $2.50 ingredient cost. Don't even worry about labor. This has nothing to do with labor. It's only food cost that goes into a dish. Okay, $2.50. Let's say you charge, $18.50 on the menu for this pizza. Okay, what's the profit? The profit is simply what you charge the guest minus the cost of the ingredients. In this case, it's $16. And then this template also calculates the food cost on each and every dish, because it takes the plate cost number, the $2.50, it divides it by what you charge the customer, $18.50, and that gives you the percentage of food cost. Now, once you've got a whole bunch of spreadsheets, I don't care if it's in your computer, in the cloud, or in a 3-ring notebook, I don't care. What you do next is you look at each category one by one. All these are arranged together, like all your appetizers are together, all your entrees, you get the idea. And then you rank them. This is the most profitable. This is the second most profitable, the third, the fourth, the fifth, and so on. And then you look at the difference. And this is the amazing piece. Most restaurants have a large spread or profit difference in each category of what those items contribute to the profit contribution. And in many cases, it's several dollars. So that means if you're selling this appetizer, it might contribute a $3 profit. That one might be $4.50 profit, and so on. Entrees, this one might contribute an $8 profit. Another might contribute a $12 profit. You get the idea. The second template I have ranks all those things from most profitable to least profitable in each category. And then from the point of sale system, we have a date range of data. I love using lots of data. If you don't change your menu but once a year, you got 12 months of data. If you change it twice a year, you've got 6 months of data, and so on and so forth. That will tell you the popularity or the volume of sales of all these items. And now you press the go button and this calculation does its magic, and it shows you, of all the dishes that you're selling in each category, how much money in potential profit you're losing, because in many cases, and I see it happen all the time, lower profit items are just bigger sellers, more popular than higher profit items. And it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with price or cost, but you get the idea. And the first question is, well, not everyone's going to want to buy the most profitable item. I get that. But the point I'm making here is it's very possible to re-engineer your menu where every single item in each category is $1 within $1 or even less in profit, but not 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, $10. Let me cap this with an example. I do this consulting with clients, and if they can give me recent cost sheets that their chef or kitchen manager has come up with, I'll plug all this into my template and I will show them where they lost profit every single week in their restaurant. So imagine one of my recent clients is a $3 million restaurant. They're busy for lunch, they're busy for dinner, and of that $3 million, I showed them that in every one of their categories for lunch and dinner, just about every category, lower profit items were bigger sellers, taking sales away, and they're losing dollars every single day. So over the past year, that $3 million restaurant left a potential profit of $363,000 on the table simply because lower profit items were bigger sellers, and that profit spread was not $1. It was several dollars. That's a dangerous thing. So what an eye-opener. You show that to an owner and they're like, oh my gosh, and then there's several things that we can do, and it's on the list here.
Yeah, we're going to talk about some of the sales pieces of it, but it's a weird thing to think about that I sold something, but you could have sold something better.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I know when you talk
More
about
profitable.
re-engineering the menu, it becomes a situation where you don't matter as much what you sell because they're all similar profit margins. But like most operators, if you have a menu that has various things, well, then your staff needs to know that appetizer A equals $6 to the restaurant and appetizer B equals $1 to the restaurant. And which one do you want to suggest? Well, hopefully they're suggesting the one that throws off $6 to the restaurant.
Yes.
But if they don't know, if you don't, first of all, if you don't know,
if they don't know,
you can't tell them. But if
Right.
you're not telling them, they can't tell the guests. So it's a multi-step process that breaks down in a lot of cases. This is a whole system that has to get built out. And I know Roger works with folks to do that. But